The stories presented in this video are real, but we have changed the characters' names and altered images to protect their identities. The creator of this video is not an investigative officer. These narratives have been sourced from various internet platforms. Our intent is not to accuse or target anyone in particular. Thank you for understanding.
Housing outside campus. It is exploited by many college students. The houses are close to the college. You may live with roommates and manage your studies and job rather smoothly, and you're not really living in the dorms if that's not your style. That's just what Andrea DelVesco, 21, was doing. She was in her last year of college and about to embark on her post-college life. However, everyone assumed it was a freak accident when a fire started in the apartment where she was residing. However, when the layers of mystery were revealed, the investigation revealed some horrifying facts that showed that things weren't as they looked. In the tragic case of Andrea DelVesco, the culprit is found using a red Snuggie blanket, speakers, and a bloody trail of evidence that is capped with mistakes made by the police and media. We've never covered a case like Andrea DelVesco's true crime story, so this one is going to be crazy. Welcome to True Crime Stories Hub. To ensure you don't miss anything, please click the subscribe button if you're new here. It just keeps you updated on all of my upcoming videos and is totally free. Leslie and Arthur DelVesco welcomed Andrea Lauren DelVesco, also known as Andy, into the world on June 29, 1994, in Chicago, Illinois. She had a younger sister named Alexis and an elder brother named James. Andy had a great relationship with her parents as well, and they made the permanent move to Austin, Texas. Alexis greatly admired Andy, whereas James and Andy shared a friend circle and were extremely similar in age. Alexis always aspired to be like her elder sister, Andy, who served as her role model. Andy enjoyed spending time with her family in France, seeing new places, enjoying music, and appreciating art and photography as ways to satiate her curiosity. Andy discovered she loved playing sports as a teenager and participated in the lacrosse and hockey teams while she was a student, graduating from high school in 2012. She received multiple accolades for her academic accomplishments while attending St. Andrew's Episcopal School, particularly in Latin, English, and Spanish, and was also a National Commended Merit Scholar. As a result, Andy made the decision to enroll in UCLA in the fall of 2012, where she double majored in Spanish and psychology. She was also an animal lover, and in addition to the DelVesco's beloved family dog, Jewel, Andy spent her 16th birthday building guinea pig homes in Peru. You can't make this stuff up at all. I'm not sure what else could describe the kind of person Andy was if this doesn't. However, Andy joined the sorority Pi Beta Phi as soon as she started college, and it was there that she finally connected with a group of ladies who shared her interests. Andy was seen as the mature big sister by her sorority sisters. She was the kind of person who helped others with their studies, offered her friends honest advice, and did everything else in between. Everyone in college enjoys having a little fun, but as they say, having fun can result in legal issues. Sadly, Andy experienced the same thing. She was arraigned on July 8, 2015, on allegations of illegally possessing party materials. I hope you get the consequences here, but I have to watch what I say or the YouTube police will come out of the woods. It was not appropriate to treat these charges lightly. Some people are imprisoned for years as a result of these felony charges. Andy entered a not guilty plea, was freed, and was scheduled to return to court in a few days to schedule a hearing. Andy was a very responsible student in college, but it's normal for kids this age to make some really rough mistakes, and this was his biggest one. If we're being honest with one another, though, I believe that most of us have been in a similar circumstance at some point. Perhaps we haven't been facing felony charges, but we've all made some stupid mistakes. She didn't want this obstacle to ruin her last year at UCLA, though, since Andy is Andy. In 2015, Andy moved into an off-campus apartment 4 minutes from campus with her sorority sisters, Jessica, Samantha, and Abby. Even though Andy was having a great time there, something was still lacking. Andy's passion for animals made it impossible for her to attend college without a furry friend. Andy adopted Shay Panda, a Chihuahua Terrier cross rescue puppy, in early February 2015. It would be an understatement to say that the new member of the sorority family was exciting. Shay had the affection of every roommate. Andy was reportedly having the time of her life at this point, but on September 20th, 2015, everything fell apart. And her friends' and family's life were permanently altered by the terrible things that transpired on that awful day. It was a typical day in Andy's off-campus apartment on September 20th, 2015. Making banners, brochures, and decorations to welcome new sorority sisters for the year, she and her pals were preparing for a hectic week ahead. With the apartment strewn with glitter, glue, scissors, and bright paper, Andy thought nothing would be more ideal than curling up on the couch and finishing up some work for the next hectic week. Shay, their dog, was also with Andy, and they went about their day as usual. At approximately 10 or 20 p.m., Abby was the first to leave home. She went to bed at around 1:30 a.m., and at 3:15 a.m., Jessica and Andy also made the decision to end the day. Andy slept on the sofa with her red Snuggie blanket, while Jessica went to her bedroom. Sarah Murr, a fellow sorority sister who lived above, had just returned from dropping her boyfriend off at the airport. At 5:35 a.m., Sarah got home and was approaching her front door when she sensed a presence behind her. She turned and saw a Hispanic man standing motionless like a statue, dressed in dark pants, a baseball hat, and a red and blue tank top. The man was clearly caught red-handed after what seemed like hours of staring, and he fled, letting Sarah close the front door and lock it firmly. Feeling a little shaken by the strange incident, Sarah considered phoning the police, but she opted to just get some sleep after speaking with her boyfriend on the phone and determining that he was not a threat. 15 minutes later, at 5:50 in the morning, before Samantha left the house for work in the morning, she noticed Andy dozing off on the couch. However, 10 minutes later, Abby, who had been asleep at the time, woke up to the sound of a dog barking and a piercing scream. She returned to her sleep without giving it much thought, perhaps supposing Shay and one of the sorority sisters were only having fun. However, around 6:15 a.m., Sarah, the neighbor above who was also awakened by the scream, made the decision to dial 911. 4 cops were sent to the scene at 10954 Roebling Avenue shortly after. By shining lights in the windows, they surveyed the area and discovered nothing unusual. There was silence across the area, so the officers assumed it was probably nothing without even going to check the house or knocking on the doors. So they simply walked away. Sarah was obviously uneasy with the officers' handling of the matter, but she was forced to try to calm herself. However, that didn't last long because by 7 a.m., a loud bang was the next sound that woke her up. Upon reaching her balcony, Sarah noticed a man jumping over the railing leading to Andy's balcony while wrapped in a red blanket. Sarah also caught sight of something even more concerning. That was the combination of the dim amber glow flashing through the haze and the heavy gray smoke billowing out of the windows. The home was burning. Sarah followed the man instinctively while screaming for him to stop. The man was able to escape, but not before Sarah witnessed him boarding a red Nissan and putting another man in the driver's seat. The man instantly reminded her of the one she had seen a few hours earlier by the front door. Additionally, she noticed an Alpha sticker on the car's rear windshield. Sarah acted quickly and dialed 911 once more, informing them that there was a fire in the house. Samantha, meanwhile, was awakened by the noise and Sarah's shouting and went to see how her roommates were doing. However, the sight of the smoke emanating from Andy's locked bedroom door stopped her in her tracks. Samantha opened the door, unsure of what to do, and was horrified to see Andy's entire bedroom on fire. With the exception of Andy, all of her housemates survived the ordeal safely after Samantha awakened them up with a quick dash. While the other women on the sidewalk were terrified and sobbing for Andy, hoping that she was all right, firefighters rushed the scene and put out the fire. Following the clearing of the area, the police conducted a raid on the apartment and quickly entered Andy's room, which was the origin of the fire. Sadly, there was no way to save Andy. She was found by police sleeping on her bed, and it was obvious that she had been there the whole while the fire was going on. Strangely, there was also a garbage can on the bed, and investigators suspected that it might have been used to ignite the fire. However, upon closer inspection, the detectives were appalled to see a huge pool of blood on the bed's side and bottom. The detectives were trying to figure out what had happened when they were startled out of their reverie by a noise. The sound was a whimper. Shay Panda, Andy's cherished puppy, was lying a few feet from Andy's body, covered in black soot. Shay was severely hurt, and since Andy's door was shut, she was unable to get away. She was grabbed right away and brought to a veterinarian to receive treatment for her wounds. The fact that Andy's room door was now closed was a concerning indication. Andy knew that Shay would want to get up and go about at night, so she never slept with the door closed. Who then closed it? Andy's body had already been brought in for an autopsy, and the findings were shocking. Compared to what the police and others had anticipated, they presented an entirely different picture. Unfortunately, Andy was not alive when her room and body were lit on fire because she had no smoke in her lungs. After more investigation, it was discovered that Andy had been stabbed 19 times in total, suffering fatal injuries to her neck, but she had obviously battled to the end. And it was evident from the evidence scattered across her bed and the defensive wounds on her body. What police believed to be a straightforward, yet peculiar, fire was now being investigated as a homicide, forcing them to change course. The investigators started looking for Andy's killer right away. And fortunately, they had a good lead: the enigmatic man Sarah saw leaving the house. The detectives were aware that the individual was at fault, but identifying him was a more difficult task. It was the investigators' responsibility to inform Andy's family of this difficult news in the interim. And the DelVesco family felt a part of them die forever when they learned of Andy's death. They had lost their self-reliant, affectionate, and genuine Andy. It was a direct shot to their hearts, and it appeared that disaster, loss, and misery had infiltrated the DelVesco family without any prior warning. The DelVesco family promptly traveled to Los Angeles to be with Andy's cherished puppy Shay, after learning that he was in danger of dying. Unfortunately, things weren't looking well for Shay. Her odds of recovering were little to none, and she was hardly breathing. The news crushed the already wounded hearts of the DelVesco family, and the physicians were not optimistic. To make matters worse, the media was focusing much of its attention on Andy's imminent drug charges while simultaneously fabricating stories about his death. It was heartbreaking for Andy's family to witness newspapers and electronic media quickly characterize his death as a drug-related incident. The problem is that Andy made mistakes, just like everyone else. But even for the media, fabricating a story about Andy's death being a botched gang deal without any supporting evidence was a new low. Andy was neither a dealer nor was she profiting from this in any way, shape, or form. She was merely a young lady attempting to enjoy herself while attending college. Now, she was only a child, even though this kind of enjoyment can be extremely unlawful and unethical for some. However, on September 21, 2015, 3 guys came forward to report a strange heist that took place the same evening that Andy was attacked. These males lived across the street from Andy and were also UCLA students. They discovered a laptop, car keys, and Sonos speakers gone after throwing a small party. Additionally, the men used a spare key to inspect the car, whose keys had been stolen, and discovered that it had been ransacked. The authorities investigated because they suspected that this heist and Andy's attack might be connected. And it was the very Sonos speakers that had vanished that saved them. The buyer must provide all of their information, including their name, email address, Wi-Fi, and other details, in order to use the Sonos speakers, which require online registration. Thus, the investigators had a solid lead. After verifying who had registered the speakers, a name appeared. A man named Joseph, a Fresno State University student, had already registered for the lectures. Police questioned Joseph soon away, and he was visibly scared and perplexed. He acknowledged that the speakers belonged to him, but admitted that Alberto Medina, his roommate, had brought them back from a recent trip to Los Angeles. The mention of Alberto and his trip to Los Angeles instantly alerted the investigators because it was evident that this was the same location where Andy died. Thus, they were aware that they needed to speak with this Alberto man. Alberto was discovered by the police in Los Angeles, concurrently with Andy's assault. A few minutes from Andy's off-campus residence, he was also known to have been at a friend's house in Westwood. At the time of the case, Alberto Medina was 22 years old and a psychology and social work student at Fresno State University. His family was quite proud of him because he was the first Medina to go to college. However, their enthusiasm would be fleeting. In 2014, Alberto belonged to the Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity, but his brothers promptly expelled him for misbehavior. Many Fresno State female students said Alberto was a creep as well. Alberto also drove a dark red Nissan, identical to the one spotted the night of Andy's death, if that wasn't frightening enough. When Andy's case made headlines, Alberto wouldn't stop talking about it, according to another of his roommates, Joseph, who also spoke to the police. Unbelievably, he even commended the murderer for having the cunning to burn the trash can in order to, quote, destroy all evidence. Alberto boasted that there was a possibility that Andy's heinous murder was motivated by sexual desire. Something about the whole situation felt strange, and Joseph decided to approach the police because he was troubled by Alberto's great interest in such a cruel and tragic story. Alberto Medina was arrested on September 26th, first on robbery charges, and escorted to the Fresno police station for an interview. It was Joseph's chat with detectives that ultimately led to Alberto's demise. Throughout the interrogation, he remained stern and haughty, and he didn't even bat an eyelid when he heard Andy's name. Though the two reportedly spent the night partying and attending a concert, Alberto did admit that he traveled to Los Angeles to meet up with his high school friend, Eric Marquez. Being the wonderful friend that he is, Alberto then attempted to place all the blame on Eric, telling investigators that he was the one who had returned the speakers to Fresno. However, upon further investigation, the investigators discovered that Alberto had returned to Fresno by himself on September 21st, proving that this was a clear fabrication. As further information became available, the authorities discovered that on the night Andy died, Alberto and Eric were actually at a home party. And here's the thing, where is the party address? Andy is directly across the street. It turned out that some of the partygoers had made fun of Alberto, so he had taken the speakers, laptop, and keys as payback. Alberto, however, saw this as an opportunity to blame Eric once more when the detectives questioned him about Andy. He continued by saying that Andy had been attacked by Eric. However, this trick was also promptly dismantled after both males underwent a thorough physical check. Alberto had scratches, bruises, and other ailments, while Eric had none. His knees, torso, head, and arms were all scratched and bruised. The investigators also investigated Alberto's apartment and found a red Snuggie, a woman's underwear, a blood-soaked Nike tank top, and the murder weapon, a bloody kitchen knife, all in a black garbage bag inside his closet. Andy's blood was a match when it was tested, thus the solution was obvious. Alberto was going to stand trial and be held accountable for his actions because of Sarah's attentiveness, her witness statements, and the evidence discovered in his flat. The prosecution claims that on the fateful night of September 21st, Alberto was partying with a few friends and girlfriends. However, Alberto made an unsuccessful attempt to court one of the females when the party boarded an Uber to head home, and the guys were dropped off at Eric's apartment first. At 4:34 a.m., The men left the flat once more and went to a party at the house on Roebling Avenue, which was directly across the street from Andy's. However, a few minutes later, they were spotted rushing toward their red Nissan after leaving the residence with the stolen goods. Julio was out collecting tin cans for recycling just before 5 in the morning when he noticed Alberto and Eric laughing loudly in a car, as if they were intoxicated. Alberto asked Julio if he knew how to fight when the men came up to him because he was going to a woman's apartment and wasn't sure if there would be any men there. Julio merely laughed in confusion. Around this time, Alberto was seen eerily standing close to the front door of Andy's residence. Alberto is said to have targeted Shay between 5:50 and 6 a.m. when Andy woke up and picked her up along with her blanket to go to their bedroom. The prosecution claims that Alberto was upset because he had been rejected by a woman earlier that evening, but he was determined not to let this one get away with it. Even worse, Alberto had the ideal opportunity to enter Andy's bedroom covertly because the French doors leading to her chamber didn't close all the way. As we indicated at the opening of the case, Sarah called 911 after an intense battle with Alberto, who is thought to have assaulted Andy with a kitchen knife stolen from their home's kitchen and killed her. The fact that Alberto was still in Andy's bedroom when the investigators came and surveyed the area at around 6:23 a.m. was horrifying and frightening. The thing that baffles me, though, is that, as we just spoke about, the police didn't even bother banging on windows or doors or doing anything else when they initially arrived. They simply looked around before departing. Alberto could have been apprehended considerably sooner and, depending on the time frame, might have even saved Andy's life if they had at least knocked on the front door or perhaps gone a step farther and checked about the house. Andy's destiny was sealed when the cops left because it is thought that Alberto burned the trash can between 6:45 and 7 in the morning, placed it on the bed, and ran away. Alberto Medina was convicted on May 29, 2018, 3 years after Andy's untimely and terrible death, of first-degree murder, first-degree arson, 2 counts of robbery, and 1 act of animal cruelty. He received a life sentence without the chance of release. However, since there was no concrete proof linking Eric to Andy's death, he was only charged with robbery and accessory after the fact and received a 2.5-year prison sentence. And if he had any involvement at all in Andy's death, it was minimal, as far as we know. However, this scenario becomes worse just when you believe it can't get much worse. Andy's cherished dog, Shay, needed to be released from this life. The DelVesco family knew it was best to let her leave and get her back together with Andy because she had numerous injuries, many of which were far worse than they first appeared to be. It would be an understatement to say that Andy's family was deeply affected by this loss. Andy only had Shay as a recollection, and it turns out that Shay was always by Andy's side during and after the attack, based on evidence discovered at the murder site. It appeared as though Alberto attacked Andy at random, and anyone could have done it that evening. However, following the preliminary hearing, Andy's roommate Jessica identified Alberto as the man who had approached Andy and a few other females a few months earlier when they were out for a walk with Shay. Andy even told them where she lived during their brief conversation with Alberto, but she was unaware that this information might eventually lead to her own death. After all, Alberto appeared to be a completely typical man at the moment. However, this raises a significant query. Was it intentional, or did Alberto choose Andy as his victim at random that fateful night? In all likelihood, we will never find out. Regarding the police, on November 4, 2016, Rodel Saduth and Alicia Williams, the 2 policemen who first answered Sarah's call, were dismissed from their positions. I'm grateful for that. The DelVesco family feels compelled to hold these 2 cops accountable for their poor handling of the matter. If they had genuinely looked into the inhabitants as they were meant to, you can't help but think that perhaps, just possibly, things would have turned out differently. At least Alberto could have been caught and punished right away, even if Andy had already left by the time the detectives arrived. However, that did not occur. In the end, Andy's family must continue living their lives without his vivacious, giving, and affectionate presence. A precious, kind, energetic young girl with a lot to offer. Knowing that Andy didn't die alone is the only comfort that can be given to his family. A small embarrassment. She never left her side, not even when she was dying.